It is Friday, January 29th. Let's talk PlayStation. Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. Let's start off the show as always with our PlayStation Plus reminder. You have until this coming Tuesday, February 2nd, to download January's games or add them to your library. Make sure you do that. Come Tuesday, we'll move over, and we know what those games are going to be, and it looks like a very solid month. In fact, a great month. Concrete Genie, Control Ultimate Edition, and Destruction AllStars. So we were expecting Destruction AllStars. We'll talk about that in a second here. It's our first news story. But Concrete Genie, very underappreciated game, first-party game out of Pixel Opus. Definitely something where I can understand that it's not for everybody, but hey, it's free, so you can certainly try it if it's ever piqued your interest. Control might be... this might be a bittersweet situation depending on how you handled that game, of course, because we know if you bought the Ultimate Edition, then you're good to go, but if you have the base game and all the content, they were forcing you to still buy the recent Ultimate Edition for a free upgrade, so you may have avoided that. But there was also a recent sale for the Ultimate Edition, so maybe that would have finally got you to buy in and you'll get your free upgrade, which you still will, but if you had held off on that, then you're getting the game for free, which, mind you, the PS5 version is coming out this Tuesday, so whether you have a PS4 or PS5, make sure you claim the game, that way you'll be able to play it. But this might have been awkward depending on if you spent money on the game at any point. Destruction AllStars, though, we can just segue into our next news story, which is we got a state of play for the game. Yes, about, 7-8 minutes long, and this is exactly what we were asking for. Not quite like a full match uninterrupted, but this is fine. This is exactly how I want the game to be presented, which is natural gameplay, how you would expect to play it yourself, right? To be honest, I would love a state of play like this for every single major first-party game that comes out of Sony right before it comes out, right? So it's very close, and this game is a little bit more accessible because it comes with a Plus membership, so there's no major commitment. You can just try it, and if you don't like it, that's fine. But I just like that we are getting a state of play right before the game comes out, and it's pretty lengthy. It explains things, and you can get a better feel for how the game might actually feel, and the gameplay loop. How will it actually be fun? Is it something that you'd be interested in? And looking at it, I think that there's a lot going on, but yeah, it does look genuinely exciting. And that's what's always intrigued me about this game, is that you've got the mix of on-foot and car combat, and we just didn't get to see a whole lot of that. But here, you can get an idea of what they're going for, and it's definitely different. I like what they're doing here. I'd be interested to see where the meta kind of falls. I feel like there's going to be some balancing issues, especially because all the different drivers have all these different offensive and defensive abilities, so something's going to rise to the top there, and that might be annoying when you're playing the game online. I'm sure they'll have to do a lot of balancing stuff over time with patches and whatnot, and they've committed to that. They'll be doing a lot of post-launch stuff, which is good, but many are concerned about how the game will handle its monetization efforts long-term, which we already knew the game was going to have some form of monetization efforts beyond even when it was going to be a $70 game, right? We knew that there was going to be some kind of currency in the game that you could buy, and whether that's earned in-game or paying for it, there was a premium currency. The game's director Colin Berry talked about this a little bit in the State of Play, where there's all-star coins and that's free, but the destruction points are something that you can either earn through weekly challenges, or yes, you can pay for them, and these would be used strictly for the challenge series in the game, and this is the offline 1v1, kind of an arcade mode where you learn more about the character's backstory. And that's the thing, is that you almost have to figure that going from a $70 release to now PlayStation Plus, where it's easily going to reach a lot more people, but at the expense of not being sold at $70, that whatever monetization pipeline they had in place there was changed to reflect how it's now going to be available for millions of more people versus again being sold at $70. So we can't speak too much on it now, of course, but once the game comes out, we'll see just how favorable it is to them, or how easily and accessible you can earn those points for free. Moving on to our next news story, Housemarque's PS5 exclusive Returnal has been delayed, unfortunately. Not by much, we're looking at like a month and a half here. Over on Twitter, the official PlayStation account did tweet out, Returnal has a new release date of April 30th, 2021. SI and Housemarque have made the decision to move the release date in order to give the team extra time to continue to polish the game to the level of quality players expect from Housemarque. See you in April. So, not too bad, right? This isn't all doom and gloom. It's a month and a half, and really for them it's a month because there's a lead time on printing discs, so this is really a matter of them needing extra polish. The game is in all likelihood going to hit April 30th, no problem. I do find it interesting that this was only a tweet from Sony and not necessarily, I believe there was no press release actually sent out, no post on the PlayStation blog, so especially with a lot of Sony's recent titles, they have been leveraging a lot of word of mouth versus putting advertisements left and right and things like that. But, that might kick off once the game is closer to release, which we could also probably expect a state of play for Returnal the second or third week of April before the game actually comes out, which, like I said earlier, I would love that for most of Sony's games moving forward. Now, currently, if you're on PS5, which I know a lot of people aren't, but if you are, one issue that we've had since launch is that on the PlayStation Store, there's no dedicated section for sales or deals. Essentially, you had to manually check that on the PlayStation blog to find out what you're looking for and then go hunt for it on the PS5 by searching for it, which was really strange, but this was recently fixed over the air, so no system software update required. So you can just check out the store right now on PS5, and there's now a tab up top for deals, and this actually reflects all the current deals that are available, so that's super handy. And I mentioned prior to PS5 coming out that there wasn't going to be feature parity, and that's very much the case. There are some things missing that we had on PS4, and that might be frustrating, but this was really strange to not have deals available day one, or the transparency of what deals are available on the store, right? I mean, you would expect that Sony wants people to buy all the games that are currently, half off or something, but either way, that's fixed. Now, good segue to our next news story, which is the PlayStation Store on PS Vita. That's right. So I did not think we would be talking about this or the fact that this has recently been fixed. But if you didn't know, on PlayStation Vita, the PlayStation Store is largely dead at this point. You can still use it, right? You can still search for content, buy things, but you have to manually look for what you want, right? That was the issue. Well, now it's been fixed for whatever reason across multiple territories. The latest tab now will actually show you the games that recently came out, which, mind you, I'm showing you a bunch of games that came out in 2020, and the release timelines are far and few between, but that's because, Vita is an aged, dead platform at this point. But there are developers that are still making games and shipping on the platform, and so that's just what's disappointing about this. It's nice that this was fixed, but at the same time, how could you not assign a very small team, a small crew that can do this, 1 or 2 days a week, just to make sure that the Vita store is properly reflecting all the recent games that are coming out? Because again, you've still got developers that are releasing games on this platform. So I mean, if I were a developer shipping a game on Vita right now, I would have been very frustrated with how the store wasn't showing your game being available, right? But that is, for whatever reason, currently fixed. Next up, this isn't really a major news story, but still worth pointing out. We've got some restructuring going on at Sony Corporation with one prominent individual in the PlayStation corporate ladder, which is Tsuyoshi Kodera, or most know him as John Kodera, and most will probably remember him from when he was the president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment for about a year, and that was after Andrew House left. So prior to that, he was the head of network services for a very long time. He oversaw things like PSN, the store, PS Plus. Andrew House left, he took over, and then he only did that for about a year, and then that's when Jim Ryan took over, and he actually went back to network services. And so what happened recently is that he actually, I guess, graduated outside of Sony Interactive Entertainment, same role, but all of Sony Corporation. So Sony.net actually gives his full title, which is kind of long-winded, but Officer in Charge of Digital Transformation Strategy Deputy President, Sony Interactive Entertainment. That's what he was doing, and now he's got that same role for all of Sony Corporation. So this is something that we've seen a few times over the years, really the last, decade and a half, where, PlayStation is becoming more and more a larger part of, all of Sony Corp's revenue stream. And, you see the guys and girls at PlayStation, taking on roles at Sony Corp because they're doing so well, right? And that's what we often like to see, right? When we've got, some of these people coming from PlayStation taking over these roles at all of Sony, that, gives more support to the PlayStation division, but also they want those people to try and clean up the other divisions at Sony because, the PlayStation role is doing so well within all of Sony Corp. Moving on to our next news story, the PS5 stock and scalping situation in the UK is looking, more and more grim. So this past week, what happened here is the retail chain Argos, they had some PS5s that were going to be going up, and before these consoles even were listed publicly, a scalper group noticed an exploit in the URL to where they could check out and secure those consoles before the main page actually went live for everybody. And so essentially they claimed to have received a bunch of PS5s, which Argos responded saying that they were canceling those orders. But sure enough, the scalper group likes to gloat all about the service that they offer and all these consoles that they picked up. So they were showing proof that they did in fact go pick up the consoles. Then Argos followed up saying that they've closed that exploit, so whenever they offer more machines, they won't be able to purchase them in the same way. Now this is a problem where, you know, and I've said before, like, yeah, the scalping sucks, but most consoles are still going to people that are just buying it normally to play it for personal use and things like that, and that's still largely true. But when you have a situation where there's an exploit to where they can snatch the consoles before they go live, then yeah, you've definitely got no shot whatsoever. Whereas before, at the very least, you know, the bots have a checkout speed much faster, but there's still always depending on how much stock's available, there's still that chance that when something goes live, humans can still check out with some of the last amount of consoles before the bots, you know, again, they check out so fast. But if you can't even get to the page to begin with, then yeah, you've got no shot of being able to secure a console. And it doesn't look like it's going to get much easier anytime soon. I've been saying for a while now, I want to see what Q1 looks like. We're in Q1 right now for 2021, and AMD has pretty much laid it out there that the supply is going to look pretty rough until at least the second half of 2021. So AMD CEO Lisa Su mentioned that for their entire product lineup, whether it's for, you know, off-the-shelf PC parts that they sell, their CPUs, GPUs, you know, they supply for Microsoft and Sony for Series SX, PlayStation 5. They're waiting to get another supply production line going for the second half of 2021, but for right now, supply is going to still be pretty constrained. And, you know, it's important to note that it's only, you know, it's not a matter of like, because there's still probably going to be a good amount of consoles available, whether you're buying Sony or Microsoft's machine, but the demand is just so much to where, yeah, it just seems like, you know, it might be tough to buy this thing for a long time, for the next, you know, 5-6 months, which is going to be, you know, really annoying, because even the second half of 2021 isn't going to look all that great either, because then we're just getting closer to the holidays. So that's not encouraging, because you do want it to be a point to where you can comfortably buy it. And it makes you wonder what the supply chain is going to look like for anything else related to the consoles, right? I mean, we're waiting for Sony to show us different colored DualSense controllers. Maybe they're going to offer some plates. You know, even at retail, certain games have actually been very hard to find if you do prefer physical games. It's just it's crazy how many people are buying video games nowadays, and obviously the consoles are still going to be a hot item. For our next news story, if you remember a few weeks ago, we were talking about the website GameAwards.net, which they track a bunch of titles that have won a Game of the Year award amongst all these different sites and publications, trying to crown one the winner against the other ones for any particular year. And the story there was that The Last of Us Part 2 won the most awards in 2020. Well, now we're to a point where we can say The Last of Us Part 2 won the most awards out of all those years, all those games. It's got 265 Game of the Year awards, which is crazy. That's 5 more than the previous frontrunner, which was The Witcher 3 with 260. Important to note that there are more critics and publications being ranked or added in 2020 versus, you know, what was available in 2015. So there is a slight, you know, probability favor for The Last of Us, but still impressive nonetheless. And this is also just relatable to our next story, which is the DICE Awards. So much like we talked about with the Game Awards, The Last of Us Part 2 is, it's got a lot of nominations, I think 11 total, which is the most for Sony First Party, but it is Sony First Party, so we've also got Ghost of Tsushima in there with, I think, 10 nominations. You've also got nominations for Dreams, Astro's Playroom, which is really cool to see, right? So DICE always accounts for some of those very late releases. Spider-Man Miles Morales. So once again, we've got more Sony Interactive titles just receiving all this praise and critical acclaim. But to go back to The Last of Us, it's got to be a really weird position for Naughty Dog where, you know, everybody that worked on the game, they worked really hard. Whether you like it or not, they worked really hard on that game. It was not an easy process. Making games is never an easy process. But to see all this critical acclaim from 265 different outlets, and there's still tons of people that will totally be vocal about how much they liked it and enjoyed it, to have so much of that alongside so much criticism and even crazy hate and vitriol, right? It's so weird because sometimes or really often when a game wins, you know, that many awards and there's a lot of praise, it often is associated with people also really having a great time with it, right? So I wonder what it's really going to look like, say, 5-10 years from now, because that's, you know, usually we can see conversations shift on certain games. Some games age better than others, and there's always that value perception when you say spend 60 and, you know, you don't like it, but if you spend 5, all of a sudden you have a different experience and it's much better for you. So I wonder what the conversation will look like 5 years from now, if it will steer in a a better direction for this game or a worse one, or if it will still be what looks like a very even split between, you can't stand the story and the direction of the game, or you loved it and you love that emotional experience. I want to see where that goes. But anyway, moving on to our next news story, we've got some rumors here regarding some PS4 games that might be getting PS5 upgrades. This is coming from the user Naptra over on Reset Era in the PlayStation Studios thread, where they say, if you're interested in Death Stranding but haven't played it yet, it might be worth it to wait a little bit. Somebody followed up saying Death Stranding Extended Edition coming to PS4 and PS5. Just want to confirm if what I got told is true. They say yup. Then somebody asked for clarification on a patch or a separate PS5 version. They say, if there is an upgrade path, I think it will be paid since there's new story content in this version. Now, why is this noteworthy? Especially because nowadays I try to be very mindful of what we talk about here when it comes to leaks and rumors. There's so much BS around the internet nowadays, and I try to label things appropriately and things like that. But if you remember in my PS5 leaks and rumors video, very rare circumstance when this happens, but Naptra was in there towards the end when talking about the PS5 live stream, our first one. They correctly guessed every single, I don't want to say guessed, but they correctly pointed out all the announcements that were actually present in that live stream, and some things that weren't in there, like the Marvel's Avengers exclusive DLC was announced outside of the event. That was also true. Specific things like an LBP spinoff, which at the time, we had no indication that, Little Big Planet as a franchise was still going to be relevant, or that there was a title in the works, right? So clearly they had insight onto the event and things like that. It's very rare that somebody knows, all those different things from different publishers and, game developers and different disciplines throughout Sony. So clearly they have some inside information to some degree, which is why this is noteworthy. Now, in regards to The Last of Us Part 2, that's also something that they mentioned, where they say, I know a patch was in the works at some point, but I'm not sure if that's still happening or when. I'd be surprised if it doesn't get a patch, though. And, well, that makes sense for that game anyway. I mean, for Naughty Dog in the short term, where, long term would be their next actual project, but short term we're looking at factions, whatever that ends up looking like, whether it's free to play with the base game or whatever. We know that Naughty Dog is working on PlayStation 5 currently. They're Sony's lead developer. The ICE team's there. I mean, it would be weird to not have some native PS5 enhancements for whatever factions looks like. And Last of Us Part 2, where it's still highly relevant and winning all these awards. Death Stranding just got a PC release, new story content. That would totally make sense if that's coming. I mean, I expect something like that from Kojima. You could easily repackage that, make it an upgrade path, or go ahead and charge, $60, $70 for it if you want to. I'm sure that will go over well, but that's something that could potentially happen. And this was part of my predictions video. I mean, we definitely have to be expecting a lot of native PS5 games coming from Sony's first party, or even, these second party games like Death Stranding. And these can be coincided with, again, relevant news items, or in the case of Death Stranding, new story content, right? There's just, there's good ways to do this. And so, I mean, this is kind of expected, I think. Now, this goes well with our next news story, which is Sucker Punch's cinematic creative director, Dave Malloy. His LinkedIn profile was very revealing just recently, and we've been seeing a lot of this lately, but over on his LinkedIn, in the About section where he talks about his background and expertise, towards the bottom it says, presently working on the Ghost of Tsushima game for Sony PS5. He has since changed this to Ghost of Tsushima game for Sony PlayStation, so good choice of ambiguous words there, but I mean, this isn't all too surprising given that up to this point we've had job listings saying, you need an interest, or, if you are intrigued by, feudal Japan history or combat designers, being a prerequisite is playing the current game on PS4, Ghost of Tsushima. So they're not direct confirmations. This is probably the most direct thing we've seen so far, but clearly this is a franchise that they care about. So whether you could chalk it up to just more content for Legends, a native PS5 version of the current game, or a sequel, I mean, it's probably a mix of all of these, right? Where Sucker Punch is committed to this game and this franchise, and so we'll be seeing a lot more of Ghost of Tsushima. Moving on to our next news story, over on Twitchgaming, as part of a live stream for the New York Game Awards, there was an hour-long interview between three very big, important employees between all the major console manufacturers. So it was Reggie Fils-Aimé from Nintendo, Robbie Bach from Microsoft, and Jack Tretton from Sony, which, if you remember Jack, he was the former president and CEO of Sony Computer Entertainment America. We've talked about Jack on this channel so many times over the years, and this was a pretty cool interview because they talk, about some behind-the-scenes things and whatnot. I always enjoy hearing those stories. And so from Jack's perspective, one little thing I'm going to pull out of here was a question regarding the console war back then. And he mentions some pretty good quotes here I'll share with you all. He says, "I think there were two camps. I really believe that a rising tide lifted all boats, and the stronger that, your competitors were, the more attention there were that video games drew. And ultimately, I felt we were competing for people's free time. Personally, I thought very highly of the guys that I competed with, and I would tell you that if there were people that annoyed me, there was a lot more of them at Sony than there were at Microsoft or Nintendo." And right when Jack said that, both Reggie and Robbie were dying right away. They were laughing, and we all knew what that meant, right? Because you have to remember, it's totally a competing space at a corporate level. Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, the actual manufacturers, they are pressured to deliver those numbers and make sure they have that market leadership. But they even discussed how for publishers and game developers, that was an area where they reaped the reward greatly because they could approach Sony or Microsoft, go back and forth. They offered this, they offered that, trying to sweeten the pot for them, which works out better for the consumer at the end of the day. But at a corporate level, yeah, there's obviously a certain level of competition. But it's just so funny to hear such a candid, open response of like, yeah, but the people I worked with, let me tell you, they drove me nuts. Because you got to figure that's what it is, right? Especially when you are at the very top of that branch and you're, delegating and making all these decisions and having to deal with all these people and, being given all these presentations left and right. And it's a really interesting interview. I mean, there's also an example where Robbie Bach talked about how he saw three presentations for a portable Xbox called the X-Boy. I love hearing stories like that. So really good interview. I'll probably just link this down below if you do want to sit through it and watch it. You can put it at 1.5 speed too to kind of work through it a little faster. But they talk about the current wars as well, where we're going in the future, things like that. I thought that was fun to bring up. Now, with all that said, it's time to get to Let's Talk Plus, our weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. If you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to pay for your games. Those are all the news stories that I want to talk about with you all. Our Tuesday video was PS3 Online in 2021, who's still playing and why. This is the third year we've done this video, and I really love doing it now, and I hope we can continue to do it for years to come. And based off of the results of 2021, where you would think it would be, the toughest to do versus the last 2 years, worked out quite well, and so I think we'll be okay in that area. So we'll always have some, PlayStation 3 content here on the channel, and we'll cover more PlayStation platforms too as well. But that was last Tuesday. I don't know what I've got planned coming up exactly. I don't know what video will be ready, but as always, there will probably be something there. If not, follow me on Twitter. I'll keep you posted there. But that's it for now. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.